Welcome back to the Links Golf Podcast. I am Al Lunsford, digital editor for Links, joined by Joe Passoff. Today we have a special guest. This episode is presented by Perry Golf, who is sponsoring this season. Visit them, discover how you can see the world and play golf while doing it by visiting Perry Golf, Perry golf.com. Joining us today, deja vu all over again. It's Jay Blasi. We are talking to Jay for the second time, which as the listener don't know, this is the second time, but Jay granted us the pleasure of his company. We recorded a podcast. It was lost in the ether, and then Jay had to skip abroad, so we are circling back with him. He's gracious enough to give us more time than we deserve with him, but he's back. We're going to do a podcast with him today. Jay, how you doing? I understand you just got back from, several places. You were in Europe. Do you know where you are right now, other than the office is a dead tell? But what you been up to recently?
Well, I think we recorded this, 10 or 11 days ago or so, or whenever we did. And since that time, I flew to Minnesota, flew to Germany, spent some time in Germany, 3 days in Paris with my wife and son, back to Minnesota, back to California, where I'm here now. I've been here for a nice 36-hour visit, and I fly to Minnesota this afternoon. So it's been a whirlwind for sure.
There and back again, and now Jay is also sporting some apparel with his logo on it. Can you tell us about your logoed merch you got going on there?
Well, yeah, I started my own company in 2012, and I kind of go by Jay Blasi Design or Blasi Golf Design. The legal name of the company is Lone Fur Design LLC, which references the lone fur from Chambers Bay. So after a while, finally got some hats and sweatshirts. So it's a long journey, and ordering merch and trying to get it right is a pain in the butt. But it's nice to actually have some.
I'm quite sure. So we'll get into your design work. We want to talk Poppy Ridge. We want to talk about some of your other projects, Golden Gate Park amongst those. Where can the listening audience learn about your design firm, the projects you have worked on, have going on currently, and keep up to date with you? Where can they do that?
Yeah, so the website is jblasi.com. So that's probably the easiest way. And on there's links to the Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I think Twitter is at Jay Blasi and Instagram is at Blasi Golf. So those are probably the easiest ways to Instagram and Twitter are probably the easiest way to get updates as to what's going on. But the website's got all the background info and everything.
Very good. Well, thank you again for joining us today. Joe, do you want to go anywhere in particular to start with Mr. Blasi? And I know.
Yeah, I'd like him to take me to Germany. I mean, that would be fun. We have traveled together a couple of times, but Al, I think the logical starting point, the reason why we wanted to talk to you now at this time, Jay, was the reception to your recent work on a course in Northern California called Poppy Ridge. And some people knew about Poppy Ridge earlier. Maybe it was overshadowed by another course owned by the Northern California Golf Association, which was Poppy Hills down in the Monterey Peninsula. But now Poppy Ridge is gaining reviews that say this is really special. This is a new reason for traveling golfers to visit Northern California, have an amazing place to play alongside all of the NCGA members that are going to enjoy this. So if you can, give us a little bit of the backstory of Poppy Ridge. What did you do? When did you do it? And what's going on right now?
For sure. Well, as you referenced, Poppy Ridge is owned and operated by the Northern California Golf Association, which I believe is the second biggest golf association in North America with 220,000 plus members. So, and they operate two golf courses, like you mentioned, Poppy Hills down in Monterey, and then Poppy Ridge in Livermore, California, which is part of the Bay Area. It's kind of wine country. It's a little bit east of San Jose and Oakland. And so Poppy Ridge was a 27-hole golf facility that was built in the mid-90s. Three kind of, quote, equal nines, originally designed by Reese Jones. And like many golf courses, after 25 or 30 years, the infrastructure of the golf course, the irrigation system, drainage, some of the stuff that you don't see but is below ground, kind of reaches the end of its useful life. And so there's a need for reinvestment. So the NCGA had been studying for a while as to, we know we need to reinvest in the facility. How is the facility performing? How is it meeting the needs of our members? And is that what we want for the future? And so as they went through the process over the last few years, I think they made a couple big decisions. Number one was they decided that they wanted to have an 18-hole championship golf course rather than kind of three equal nines. They wanted to have a standalone 18-hole championship golf course, and then they would offer a smaller nine that would still serve their members well, but might be more catered towards beginners or seniors, things like that. And so I got involved a few years ago as they went through a big architect search, and ultimately, that was kind of a long process. So I've been working on the project for multiple years now. And we just opened the golf course on May 30th or May 31st to the public. So it's been a great journey. It's a really, really special site. I had not spent a lot of time over in Livermore, but Poppy Ridge is a really, really beautiful setting. It's kind of a postcard of what many people would think California looks like if you haven't been out here. There's big views of golden hillsides. It's a pretty dramatic landscape with about 200 feet of elevation change. It's dotted with oak trees, so long views in all directions. So it's a really special property. And as we went through the process, we think we've been able to craft a golf course that's going to really serve the needs of the NCGA members really well. One of the things that I'm most excited about was the previous golf course really wasn't walkable. If you had a death wish, you could pull it off, but it really is quite unwalkable. And so one of the main driving guiding lights as we went through the process was to try to make the golf course walkable. And having walked it yesterday morning, I can attest it's quite walkable now.
Good to hear it. Jay, let's not go besides walkability. How did you achieve walkability in the new 18? And what else did you do to really change the personality? Because it doesn't sound like a renovation. It sounds like practically a new golf course.
It very much is a new golf course. It was completely rerouted. Everything is new. The turf, the greens, the bunkers, everything's new. So it's a new golf course on the site of an old golf course. And there's really not that much in common with the old golf course. The fairways are much wider. And the old golf course, even though our fairways are much wider and the landing areas are much wider, overall turf, we've reduced the irrigation footprint. So whereas the old golf course might have had 20 yards of rough to the right of a tee box, now we have the tee box, and then there's kind of native grasses directly adjacent to the tee box where nobody's going to hit a golf ball, and then the fairways are much, much wider. In terms of the green complexes, almost, I think 16 out of the 18 greens on the old golf course had bunker left, bunker right, or bunker left, water right. Basically all the greens were popped up. You had to hit an aerial shot. There was trouble left and right on every approach. Now we have lots and lots of short grass around the green. So if you're not able to hit it high and land it soft, you can bounce the ball into the green. And there's lots of interesting contours in and around the greens so that, there's lots of slopes that will help get your ball closer to the hole, and there are other slopes that'll take it away. In terms of how did we achieve the walkability, that was through a lot of kind of creative earthwork. As I mentioned before, it's a big, bold site. There's lots of elevation change. Almost all of the work that we did was to soften the landscape a little bit, and to make those transitions a little longer and smoother. The old golf course, you would play a hole and walk 250 or 300 yards to the next hole. You might even pass one or two other holes to get to your tee box. Now the green complex and the short grass around the green flows directly into the next tee complex. So the next tee might be, 20 steps off the last green. So big transition there. And then I touched upon like grasses. The old golf course built in the 90s was built with cool season grasses. And we've transitioned and we're using Santa Ana Bermuda grass for the tees, the fairways, and the green surrounds, which in Northern California, we have water limitations, and the site is very much like a desert. And so this Bermuda grass will use far less water and really thrive in the local environment. So really feel like we're set up well long-term for sustainability on a number of fronts.
So Al, one more question from me on Poppy Ridge, which just sounds so much more enticing, and in that same family of outside publicly accessible golf courses that are owned and operated by the Northern California Golf Association. So primarily for the benefit of locals, members, but also if you happen to be traveling west, come see it. Jay, what is one hole from your new 18-hole creation that is perhaps most emblematic of what you were able to achieve there?
A great question. There's a bunch. It's like asking your favorite kid, right?
I know yours. Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, I only have the one. But yeah, the sixth hole is a fun one. It's got a very wide fairway. It's kind of a short to medium length par 4, moves from right to left. It's a hole that was crosses 4 holes of the old golf course. So it kind of occupies terrain that wasn't really utilized before, or at least not in that manner. And it's got a very unique green setting. So if you can picture, putting a green in a volcano, that's kind of what the green setting is like. Ironically, the inspiration for this hole came from this little tiny country golf course in New Zealand. I had visited New Zealand in February of 2024, and we played all the famous golf courses on the North Island and saw all the magazine cover holes and whatnot. And then we stumbled upon this little golf course called Waverly Golf Club, little country golf course, 1 greenkeeper. The rest is maintained by sheep, no formal bunkers. You put your $20 in the drop box and off you go. And it was the most magical, special piece of golf ground that I've encompassed. I mean, it's just this unbelievably crazy rumpled landscape and just this fabulous golf course that wanders all over the terrain. And the 12th hole there had this really neat green setting. The kind of green sits in a volcano type of setting. And so that served as a bit of inspiration. Ironically, the club captain from Waverly, who we befriended while we played, was visiting California during construction. So he came out during construction, and I took him around and I took him to that spot. We were just kind of getting started, and I told him what we were going to build, and of course was the inspiration. He was pretty blown away. He was excited to go back and tell all the locals that the big California golf course is copying us in some way, shape, or form.
Can you think of a hole that, in the same way sort of sticks in your head, and maybe it's not something that you've done, but you might like to have a flavor of on a future golf course that you work on?
Well, on every golf project that I work on, inspiration comes from all sorts of different places, right? And so whether it's a natural landform on that property that all of a sudden excites you and you want to use it in a creative way, if all golf projects are a big team effort. There's dozens of people that contribute to building the golf course, whether that's designers, shapers, owners, folks on the construction crew, irrigation team, and each one of those individuals comes with different ideas and whatnot. So inspiration can kind of come from anywhere. I think for me, it's different on every project, right? So I don't necessarily have, a little notebook with, 50 little things that say, oh, I want to do this on the next project. It's usually kind of getting to the project, finding out what's interesting about that site or that team, and kind of going from there. So hard to say, right now what I want to do next. It's more about the site itself that usually generates that.
Well, let's take a site that you did work on recently as well, and talk about Golden Gate Park a little bit. Part of, I think, it comes up in that same conversation of the munisance and revamping municipal golf courses across the country. That seems to be sort of a trend that's happened recently. Charleston Muni is a good example of that as well. So when you got to the job to work at Golden Gate Park, what did you see when you really were able to dig in with that land and what you wanted to accomplish there?
Yeah, for those who don't know, Golden Gate Park is a 9-hole par 3 golf course. It sits in Golden Gate Park, which is really kind of the West Coast version of Central Park. It's one of the great public spaces in America or the world. We're at the far west end of the park, just a few hundred yards from the Pacific Ocean. And it's been there since 1951. It's not like it was a failing golf course. It's been a treasured part of the community since it opened. But like many others, there was need for reinvestment, particularly the irrigation system. And the other thing that when you really dug deep is the land at Golden Gate Park is unbelievable, right? It's natural sand dunes, it's rolling terrain, just ideally situated for golf. So, lots of time people will say, what's the perfect backyard? Golden Gate Park is about 20 acres. It's the perfect backyard. It's this unbelievable kind of rolling sandy land with cypress trees on it. And so, but when they built the golf course, they brought in soil and they put a layer of soil on top of the sand. And over the 70 years that the golf course had been operated, it really got overgrown. It turned into kind of this wet, kind of soggy bog type of thing. So we were able to remove some of the vegetation that didn't need to be there. We got rid of all that soil that was on top and got down to the native sands. We seeded the golf course with fescue, and we maintain it all at fairway height. So, 5 years ago, if you would have topped your golf shot, it would have gone 6 feet. And now if you top your golf shot, it might go 65 yards and bounce right up onto the green. And Golden Gate is a place where most San Franciscans will play their first round of golf, right? So it's truly a golf course for everybody. But the terrain is as special as anything you'll find in California. And so we were super excited to put together a little collection of 9 holes, and the green complexes are very bold. We knew that they would never have the greens, running at 12. They're more likely to run at 9. And so because of that, we kind of turned up the volume on some of the slopes in and around the green complexes and stuff like that. So if you ever have a spare hour and a half in San Francisco, it's definitely the place to go. It's a great hang. And this was all funded through the First Tee of San Francisco. And so they're committed to keeping golf affordable for locals and for all involved. And so I just couldn't be more excited and honored to be part of both of those projects where there's affordable public golf and what we believe is of really, really high quality that we'd put up against anything else. So it's been a fun last couple of years for sure.
Yeah, it might just be something that people stumble upon on their trip to San Francisco. A lot of people just wandering around downtown might not realize that that's there, but hopefully become aware of it. You can play both Poppy Ridge, just east of San Francisco, and Oakland, and Golden Gate Park in the same trip, and do a Jay Blasi tour of the Golden Gate City.
Next weekend, I'll play them both on the same day. So
there we go.
And you can too.
Well, Jay, you didn't exactly just stumble upon a career in golf course design. Things came very early for you in terms of your involvement in golf. and then ultimately your involvement in golf course architecture. For those of us out there who should know more about Jay Blasi, where did it all start for you, and how did your career evolve?
Yeah, so golf's really been a part of my life, my whole life. You know, my dad grew up on the south side of Chicago. He caddied at Beverly Country Club, which is a great Donald Ross course. And so that's really where he fell in love with the game. So much so that he built a putting green in the backyard. When I was born, he brought plastic clubs to the hospital. So it really started early for me. This is actually the little scorecard from the backyard green at our house. I'm going to get that framed and put it up on the wall. So, I was kind of hitting golf shots at 2 and competing at 4, and we'd go out to dinner and I'd flip the placemat over and draw golf holes in crayon. So it's kind of all I ever really wanted to do. I found out that most people got a degree in landscape architecture. So I did that. I grew up in Wisconsin, went to the University of Wisconsin. And then after school, I moved out to California and joined Robert Trent Jones II, based in Palo Alto. And I spent 11 years there and had an amazing time and just unbelievable opportunity to be exposed to all sorts of projects all over the world, and really got to kind of play a key role on 3 projects, Chambers Bay up in Washington, the Patriot outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and a unique practice facility for Stanford. And then after 11 years there, I started my own firm in 2012, and it's been kind of a fun run since then. So I keep pinching myself every day that I get to do what I've always dreamed of.
And all of us could say the same thing, except I think all of us sitting here would love to be able to be designing golf courses as you've been successful on doing. So, Jay, you mentioned how much you enjoy and wish there were more of the public-private partnerships that you've been involved with at Golden Gate and at Poppy Ridge. Chambers Bay was one of those that fit that bill. Describe the lead up to Chambers Bay and the U.S. Open. How did it all work out? You were a young associate that was had so much passion for this project, and tell us about that.
Yeah, so like I said, I went to work for RTJ and spent the first year or 2 kind of assisting other designers in the office, drawing plans, doing calculations, just learning about everything. And that was an awesome experience in itself. And then Chambers Bay was developed by Pierce County, Washington. So it's truly a public golf project. And it had a very formal process in terms of how it was going to unfold. And so I think they sent out requests for proposals basically to the entire country. I think they had 57 or 56 formal proposals come back, and then they narrowed it down to 5, and ultimately our team was selected. Because that was such a big process, there was so much paperwork. It was kind of an all hands on deck type of situation. And as part of that process, they wanted, kind of a conceptual design. What's your vision for the property? And so while others in the office were traveling the world, meeting with existing clients and stuff like that, I had time to dive in and work on that. And so I got exposed early, and then we got the job, and Pierce County wanted somebody kind of to be almost full-time dedicated to them. And so being the young guy who wasn't working on 8 projects all over the world, that was kind of an ideal role for me to be able to help. And so it was just unbelievable exposure. Chambers Bay represents, pretty much everything that I love about golf, and the fact that it's public, it's links golf. It's really part of the community. There's a trail that goes around and through the golf course. It's a reclamation project. So there's so much to really love about it. So it was ultimately a real dream come true, and a lot of fun. And as most people know, we opened in 2007, and then shortly thereafter got to host the 2010 U.S. Amateur and the 2015 U.S. Open that Jordan Spieth won. So, they asked me in high school what your dream in life was, and I said to design a U.S. Open golf course. And so to go on that journey with Chambers Bay was a really fun experience. And it was you keep pinching yourself that you got to be part of the team.
So Jay, we touched on this last time, but I think you gave such a great answer. I want to have folks hear it again or for the first time. What did you learn about design during your time with RTJ2? But also, what did you learn about the design business?
Yeah, so you can learn a lot in school, right? They teach you all sorts of stuff about drawing a grading plan and drainage and things like that. But the reality is, the golf design business is a completely other story. So it was great to be able to work in an office and see how projects come about and how there might be a potential developer who's studying different parcels and how you have to assess what are the strengths and weaknesses of different parcels and try to help guide them into the right decision. Things like putting a plan set together or putting specifications together, doing all sorts of earthwork calculations and quantities, presentations to memberships, all sorts of things like that. And what you learn early on is just that, the old adage, it takes a village. There's a lot of people that contribute to a golf project. You've got the golf design side of things, but as the golf designer, you're going to be working with civil engineers and landscape architects and irrigation designers and contractors and owners and project managers. And so, people skills are really important. Time management skills are really important. There's a million tasks that aren't the sexy part of, standing out in the field and waving your arms and thinking up of the golf hole. And so to be able to get exposed to all of that and learn all about those different things was really, really valuable.
I want to go back to Chambers Bay quickly. And Jay, you've done some stuff with links for us. There's a really good article by Tony Deere on our website where, he talks about some of the things that didn't, to him, make sense on the design, and you put him right on those things. So you quickly told Tony why, in fact, they did make sense. But interestingly, another article we did, Tony and then Joe in the podcast series we did the past couple episodes about eclectic 18s, building a dream design with 18 holes from 18 different courses. Both Joe and Tony picked the 10th hole at Chambers Bay. Can you walk us through that golf hole from your perspective and why you think it's such a popular hole amongst people like Tony and Joe?
Well, the 10th hole is kind of a medium length par 4 and plays west towards Puget Sound. It's a hole that I'm really proud of. Many people talk about it being maybe the most natural hole at Chambers Bay, when in reality, it may be the most artificial hole. So as the good doctor once said, you want to craft golf that's indistinguishable from nature or whatever. So hopefully that's an indication that we did a decent job there. I think the 10th hole's right over my shoulder here. If you want to zoom in and take a look. So what's compelling, and it's called High Dunes. Again, Chambers Bay was a former sand and gravel mine. And so there weren't really dunes there, but there were former stockpiles of sand, the byproduct of the mining operation. And so in order to get from point A to point B, the 11th hole basically sat on the far side of one of these big giant sand stockpiles that was 30, 40 feet tall. And the 10th hole needed to start and finish, and we could try to go up and over, or we could just go right on through. And because this was a big site, the site's about 250 acres, because there was lots of sand within the property, it was really, the golf design was actually its own mining operation. We moved about 1.5 million cubic yards of material. lots of that was good sand that we harvested, we screened, and then we used that to place like a blanket over the whole golf course. And so the funny thing about number 10 was we thought this was all great sand. We even took an excavator up there, and at the top we dug test pits 8 or 10 feet deep, and it was all sand the first 8 or 10 feet. So then we drew a grading plan in which the fairway was going to be 25, 30 feet lower than the top of the dune. And at about 12 feet, you hit clay. And so we ended up kind of making a mess out there for a while. But it came together beautifully. And so it's a golf hole that's kind of framed naturally by these big, tall dunes, and it's kind of nestled in there. And so I think it's a hole that resonates with people because it looks pretty and feels natural. And there's interesting strategy to it too, depending on where the hole location is. That will guide which side of the fairway you're better off on and what type of approach shot you want to hit. So.
Very good. Does it still make sense to you, Joe, your pick?
Well, don't forget, Al, that we were limited by the fact that in our eclectic 18, we could only choose one hole from a given golf course, and it had to correspond with that number. There are a couple of others at Chambers Bay that I actually like better. But 10 I love as a 10th hole, and that feeling, as I said, of being a little bit cocooned by the sea, like Waterville's 11th hole. The beauty factor strikes you first, and then you ask what am I being asked to do here on this hole? And then to hear the background from Jay about the engineering feat that it took to actually create a hole that looks so natural. That's fun. That's the stuff that not everybody gets. And you just, as Jay kind of put it, they didn't wave their wand, and because this hole was just sitting there. You had serious work to do in order to achieve a look that looked like it had been there for 1,000 years.
Another course that we did this in the last episode too with Jay, and I want to go to your Twitter, your X profile for this one. Another course you waved your hypothetical wand on was Pebble Beach, which people know quite a lot about. So I'll pull it up again so we can take a look with the people listening. But you go to Jay's page. Essentially, what you see here, pinned to the top of his profile, is a picture and a simple text: rerouting Pebble ? And a proposal for a different way to set up the 9th through 14th holes at Pebble Beach, which obviously people know. You get to Pebble, you play 6th, par 5, 7 on the ocean, the famous stretch right there, and 8. And then as it stands now, the 9th goes off to the right, 9th and 10th play along the ocean before you go back up inland for 11. But what have we done here with this reroute thought, Jay? And obviously, if you're listening, you can go to his profile. He kind of breaks it down hole by hole, but just tell us about this thought exercise here.
Well, Pebble Beach is a golf course that so many of us know and love, and you get to see it every year on TV at the AT&T, and then obviously it hosts a lot of the U.S. Open, so everybody's familiar with it. And it's got kind of this famous figure 8 routing, and obviously the holes, 4 through 10 are really famous all along the cliffs and the ocean. And as great as they are, there are a number of holes at Pebble Beach, mainly the inland hole, some real challenges. And so if there's one potential negative of the stretch of 4 through 10, it's that the water is always on the right for that entire stretch. And so the combination of that lack of variety with some of the challenges of the inland holes, I wondered whether or not you could craft a better golf course if you took the far end of that figure 8 loop and basically reversed it. And so the 9th hole on this layout is basically playing the 13th and the 12th holes backwards as a long par 5. So now you've taken an inland stretch, and rather than having 2 holes in the inland stretch, you have 1. And the 10th hole is essentially the 11th hole played backwards. For anybody who goes out to Pebble Beach, I would encourage you, next time you get to 11 green, turn around, look backwards. It's probably the best view on the entire property. Panoramic view looking down to the beach, to the ocean. You get to see, just this unbelievable view. So I think that would be neat. And then whereas 9 and 10 play along the ocean today with the ocean on the right, on this one, 11 and 12 would play with the ocean on the left. So you'd be adding a lot of variety. 9 and 10 are great golf holes. Hopefully you could create equal golf holes that are just different, right, and have more variety. And then the 13th hole essentially is kind of the replacement for the 12th, which in my opinion is a very weak hole. There's nothing to really see out there. I'm not a big fan of the strategy of that hole. But the 13th here would play in a similar direction, but because it's up high, kind of teeing off where your current 14th tee is and playing out to the middle area between 6, 8, and 14, the backdrop of that hole would actually be Stillwater Cove. And so you'd get another view there that you don't have. And again, in my opinion, the 14th hole is a weak hole. The hole moves left to right. The land moves hard right to left. It's just very awkward. And so by doing this, the 14th hole would be a par 4 instead of a par 5 and would kind of fit the land much better. So it was just my look at what could happen out there. Obviously, there's no need for them to change. They're full all the time at exorbitantly high rates. I doubt this would ever happen. But in my opinion, as good as Pebble Beach is today, there actually is a better golf course sitting there waiting to be found.
I always thought that, having played Pebble Beach a couple times, that area in between like 6, 8, 9 T, 14, where there's just like nothing there. I always thought that was kind of odd. And I know that there's a purpose for that when they have a tournament roll into town, but I like how your routing made use of that space. And also when you get to 4 at Pebble, from there through 10, basically the holes are on the water, but the water's all on the right side. So again, you flip the 9th and 10th, make 11 and 12, and have more ocean holes with it on your left, so more inherent variety. Obviously 18 is on your left as well, but you sort of mixed it up, so it's not just right until you get to the very end of the golf course and have one on the left finally. So Joe, any other things you really like about this idea?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I saw it for the first time, and you're like kind of scrolling, and like, oh, and then I think a few other people, Jay, may have joined in this exercise, and then I like, I want to go back to this. I've got something else going on, but I want to go back to this, and I started to look at it, and like, oh man, somebody with a big brain and a lot of passion for golf course design came up with this. And as I started to think more and more, and I've written about this recently with a backstory that we did on Pebble Beach's 18th. And Samuel Morse, the man who developed Pebble Beach, said he wanted to maximize the ocean views. That's what he wanted his routing to do. And so even though they were unable to route the 5th hole because as a par 3 on the ocean originally, because they had sold that piece of property and couldn't get it back until the 1990s. And then Jack Nicklaus came in and built the new 5th that goes over that sliver of ocean. I thought, well, I mean, Herbert Fowler extended the 18th from a mediocre par 4, even though it was in a nice spot, to a fabulous par 5. Why shouldn't we take Jay Blasi's suggestions seriously and maximize this acreage? Again, you talk about history and tradition and playing the same holes and stuff. I mean, there must be 50 courses in the top 200 that have made major changes, since their inception. And Jay, I'm not wearing a hat, but if I were, I would tip it in your direction because this is really cool stuff.
Well, thank you, Joe. Yeah, I haven't gotten a call yet, so I'll keep the phone handy, and we'll see when they want to call.
I think we need to get Joe one of those Jay Blasi design hats that you got on right now.
There you go.
We can make that happen.
Well, Jay, this golf course has certainly influenced a lot of people and influenced a lot of thinking about how well the original architects did do. What was the golf course that made an influence on you early in your thinking about design that said, man, this really resonates and I want to go forward with this because this really inspired me?
Yeah, so I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and so growing up in Wisconsin, got to play a wide variety of golf courses in Wisconsin. We'd go down to Hilton Head on spring break, and so I remember seeing Harbor Town for the first time was a really big deal. And as my passion grew kind of throughout high school and whatnot, you started to learn more about old classic golf courses and historic golf courses. So, I would say at that age, I had kind of a wide breadth, but not necessarily a super deep dive on things. And then while I was in college, went up and saw Whistling Straits, which had just been built. And for whatever reason, I was there with my dad and brother, and usually we come in hot, a few minutes before tea time, but somehow, some way, we were there like 3 hours before our tea time. So we went up into the pub, and there was a guy working in the pub at a booth, drawing golf plans. And so I immediately, abandoned my dad and brother and plopped myself in the booth and started peppering Tim Liddy with questions. He was there with Pete Dye that day, and he was working on plans, and Pete was out in the field. And, so I'd learned that, Pete's going to is on site today. So now my, I could care less about playing Whistling Straits. I just wanted to meet Pete Dye, and I did get a chance to say hi. But seeing Whistling Straits, I think, was really transformational for me in that, here was a site that was pretty much a flat plateau along the shores of Lake Michigan. And then Pete and his team came in and completely reimagined and crafted a new landscape, if you will, that, they tried to create a links look and feel out there. And I think one of the things that was really well done, and something that I certainly took away, was some of the terracing effect. If you study that golf course, the holes that are directly along Lake Michigan are low, and the holes that are set back from the lake are higher. And so even though they're set back, they're terraced in such a way that they still feel like they're right on the lake. And so that was something that was really unique, and I took away. And so I think there was a big kind of light bulb moment for me, just that, wow, through golf design, you can actually transform a landscape into something really special. It's awesome if you're gifted with a perfect piece of property, and your job is to ultimately find the golf holes that are already there. If you get a Sandhills type site, that's awesome. I'd give up something very valuable for that opportunity. But seeing Whistling Straits and understanding that, if it's not perfect from day one, you can transform a site and try to make it special. So that was a big light bulb moment for me.
That's pretty good proving ground, teaching ground sort of thing. One of the ultimate examples of making something from nothing, and something great. Obviously, of course, you and the RTJ2 team did that very thing at Chambers Bay. And again, it's when you see a great site, it's just don't screw this up. When you see a site that's nothing or degraded and leftover junk from some other business concern, man, that's where the real intellect comes, the creativity of how do we make this look like it's something naturally great, and how do we actually achieve it through the engineering means we need to.
Yeah, when I look at projects nowadays, I'm always kind of looking at what's the potential. Does it have the ingredients for great golf, right? And I'm sure that all sorts of designers maybe have different thresholds for what has the ingredients or what that potential is. But to me, a site like Whistling Straits or a site like Chambers Bay has all the ingredients. It's a core site. It's got the big water body adjacent to it. In the case of Chambers Bay, we had the sand. Whistling Straits didn't. They brought sand in, but it had the ingredients. Now, just because the ingredients were there, you still had to move 1.5 million yards of dirt and all sorts of other stuff to make it happen. But did it have the potential? And in my mind, both of those sites had the potential, and through their efforts, I think, have crafted things that have captured the hearts and souls of golfers around the world.
There's one more site out in Northern California that may have some serious potential, but there are a lot of roadblocks, and it is a passion project for you that you've been working on for many years, and that is, of course, Sharp Park, an Alistair Mackenzie design from around 1930 or 32, and a lot of its greatness was lost early. Tell us about the background of Sharp Park, because it's also part of the public system in San Francisco. And what's the aim? What have you been doing? What would you love to be able to accomplish? And what's realistic?
Yeah, so Sharp Park is a municipal golf course. It's part of the city of San Francisco golf courses. It actually resides down in Pacifica, which is about, 5 or 10 miles south of the city of San Francisco. It was built in 1932, designed by Alistair Mackenzie. It sits right along the Pacific Ocean. And when it first opened, there were holes literally right on the beach. And so in the first decade of its existence, there were some big storms, and they chose to kind of abandon some of those holes right along the beach and build some holes inland. But so the golf course, think about, how many wonderful Alistair Mackenzie golf courses there are, but most of them are private, right? And so the idea of having a municipal golf course designed by Mackenzie right along the ocean, pretty special stuff. Probably 10, 15 years ago, the golf course came under fire. There was a lawsuit regarding frogs and snakes, in which there was a chance that the golf course would just go away. And so a group called the San Francisco Public Golf Alliance was formed, led by Bo Links and Richard Harris. And they put a team together, and they've fought all the legal battles and have managed to save the golf course. And now that the golf course is saved, we've turned our attentions in an effort to try and restore the golf course as best we can. We can't put back all the holes. About 12 of the 18 we could kind of restore exactly into their original condition. And then the others you could adjust to make them kind of marry up with the 12 original holes that could be restored. So it's an ongoing process. There's a half a dozen agencies involved from an environmental standpoint. I'm confident we can navigate those waters. And then obviously the challenge with the golf within the city. San Francisco is not unique in that golf is a challenging prospect for cities these days, and managing all of those things. So we're kind of in a stage where we're doing planning and fundraising, but the idea would be that we would put a big group together and we would do a transformation restoration project and kind of bring Sharp Park what it once was, and then it would be there for decades to come. So my hope is that knowing that the golf course opened in 1932, if we use 2032 as our guiding light, and we say that by the summer of 2032 it has to be restored, that's a manageable task.
Yeah, sounds like an attainable goal to me. Obviously, a lot of moving parts, but I wish you the best of luck with that. So to put a bow on this conversation, you mentioned you've been traveling quite a bit. Can you tell us what else you're working on, what other sites you have to look at, and what's interesting about them?
Yeah, so this afternoon I fly to Minnesota. We're in construction at a club called Burl Oaks, just west of Minneapolis, where we're creating an 18-hole golf course plus a little 9-hole short course. So it's an existing golf course, but we're basically kind of starting over and rerouting, and by rerouting, we have the ability to add a little short course, which I think will be transformational for the club. So excited about that. That will unfold over 2 years. So the full new golf layout will open in 2027. And then I've got other projects that are kind of in design or planning that are in Wisconsin and Texas and Washington and California. So it'll be a fun next couple of years.
Joe, anything further for Jay before we let him off the hook again for another podcast?
No, it's exciting, Jay. I mean, prior to COVID, I just wasn't sure how much work was going to be around for all of you as architects. Play had slowed, development had slowed. There wasn't a lot of enthusiasm for renovation, restoration, new golf. And then COVID hit, and people were playing golf and rediscovering how much they loved it, and other people, coming into the game. So I know you have been so attuned to embracing the big world of golf, meaning families playing, young people playing, people of different abilities. And so you've been pushing for, I think there's a third 9 at Poppy Ridge that is specifically devoted. It's not of championship. It's for everybody, if you will. Sounds like with what you're doing at Burl Oaks, there's a short course in there. Do you think about in this all ages inclusion, especially because of your own family situation now?
Yeah, for sure. So I've got a young son, Bennett, who will turn 7 in September, and the last few years he's been with me out on the job site at Golden Gate Park and at Poppy Ridge and at Burl Oaks. So, I think it's always been in my DNA. I grew up, like we talked about, in Wisconsin. The first golf course I played was a little par 3 where you hit off of mats, but open to the public. Graduated up to the 9-hole executive golf course, which was called Glenway. Now it's called the Glen. That's a neat story and project in which Michael Kaiser and his family helped donate money to kind of redo that golf course. And then, graduated up to the 18-hole golf course. That's a municipal. So public golf, municipal golf's been part of my DNA forever. And I firmly believe in trying to provide as many opportunities for a wide segment of players. Golf has pretty much been responsible for everything great in my life in terms of, the people that you meet, the places you get to go, and the experiences you get to create. And so the idea of crafting places that will provide those types of memories for others is really important. So yeah, my hope is that there'll be more and more opportunities to get all people involved in the game. The reality is once you get hooked, you're hooked and you fall in love. When, if you think about, it was Bo Links, the founder of the San Francisco Public Golf Alliance, who enlightened me as to how to think about public golf. And he said, we ought to be thinking about it like universities. The universities don't exist on the tuition of the people attending college. They exist based on the donations of the alumni. And, if you think of all the municipal courses out there and who comes through those golf courses, and then they go on to become successful and join clubs and all that, if we're willing to give back and kind of support the next generation so that they have those same opportunities, I think we'll be in a great place. And so hopefully, as you mentioned, COVID was the best thing that happened to golf and everything else. So hopefully we'll be able to continue to ride that wave, and we'll be able to set up public golf so that it's in a great spot and it can continue to exist for a long time, and more people will have more opportunities.
Well, I will wave the flag for that. And Al, I'll jump
Here,
in
here.
where you usually do. And Jay, where can folks again learn more about Jay Blasi Golf?
Yeah, so the website is jayblasi.com, JAYBLASI.com. And then Twitter is @JayBlasi and Facebook is @BlasiGolf. So.
All right.
Fantastic. Well, I can definitely get on board with everything that Jay was talking about in that last answer as a father of 2 young boys under 4 years old. So let's set them up. Let's get them hooked. Jay, we can't thank you enough for, again, giving us all of your time today and a few weeks ago and all of that stuff. So look forward to talking to you again in the future as well. Good luck with everything you got going on. Thanks again for joining us on the Links Golf Podcast.
Thank you guys so much. It's always great to be with you.